Welcome, everybody, to the first draft series from Woodward Pistons with our esteemed guest, everybody's favorite Pistons content creator, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops. He also does fantastic work for Draft Digest over at SI. Former Division I hooper from American University, the pride of Syracuse, Kansas. Thank you for joining us for our first episode. Bryce Simon, how you doing?
I'm good, Steve. Man, hey, I'm just glad you got Syracuse, Kansas, because someone texted me the other day that my real GM page actually says I'm from Syracuse, New York. So, obviously, major differences there. I am excited. I am honored, first and foremost, to be here. I know I don't know, I'm not well known, but more known in the Pistons community as the Pistons guy, right? DBB and the Pistons Pulse with Omari Sankofa every Tuesday. We got a really special one coming up. I'm going to Detroit. I don't know if you know this. I'm going to Detroit here April 3rd, and we're going to record a live in-person episode. And so we're excited about that. But I also love the draft, and I do get the opportunity to work at Draft Digest and write articles over there. So I always love when I get the chance to talk about the NBA draft.
And what is your most recent article? Did you write on Jordan Hawkins, I
I
believe?
did, yeah. So this week I wrote on Brandon Miller, who I'm sure will at least reference that name throughout this episode. And then Jordan Hawkins is we have to distinguish between the best players in the draft and our favorite players in the draft. Last year, my favorite player was Benedict Mathurin. He was my favorite player. I love just aesthetically watching him play. This year, it's Jordan Hawkins, man, at UConn. I just love watching that kid play.
Yeah, definitely fantastic shooter and somebody we'll have to return to in the future. So today we are talking about Scoot Henderson and specifically Scoot Henderson on the Detroit Pistons because there have been a lot of people that are going back and forth of like, okay, if the Pistons get the second overall pick, at first it was little rumblings of like, oh, Brandon Miller, look at how he's shooting, but the 2 point percentage. And then as he got better and better as the year went on, there's been more and more people saying we could not pass up the 6'8", 6'9" shooter for another guard. And so we're going to sit and kind of break down that today. Scoot Henderson this year did play 25 games with the G League Ignite. Sometimes if you look up stats, you will see ones that say like 19 and one that say 6. The G League breaks up their season a little bit between like showcase and regular season and playoffs. So if you looked at numbers and you don't find that exact thing, just know it's a combination between the regular season and the showcase numbers. So in those 25 games, Scoot Henderson did put up 17.6 points per game, dished out 6.6 assists to just 3.3 turnovers, had 1.2 steals, and then had shooting splits of 44.4% from 2 point range, or from the overall field, 32.4% from 3 point range, and then 75% from that free throw line. A couple things in the advanced stats as well. Had an assist percentage of 30.6 to turnover rate of 12.4. So that's fantastic. Barely see that. And then the the true shooting percentage was 55% on 27.7% usage, which 27.7 is a lot, but you would think it would have been higher with how much he got the superstar treatment. But so those are really good numbers in a professional league, which a lot of people consider like the third or the fourth best professional league in the world now is the G League.
Yeah, I was writing an article for a City Sissoko coming up on Draft Digest, and I actually made the mistake with the stats. I looked at season totals, and then I was looking somewhere else, or sorry, regular season. And then I found somewhere else, and it was like, I think I was on Cerebro, and they group it all together. And one had said 20 some games, and the other one said 40. I was like, wait, what's going on? And it's because regular season, the showcase, and then postseason, which obviously maybe that should be separated. I get it, but yeah, the G League has to figure this out, man, because I've seen so many Twitter back and forth about Scoot and the 3 point percentage, because I believe in the 6 showcase games he shot over 40% from three, and then in the regular season he shot under 30%, and then when you combine it you get to the 32% that you outlined. So I feel like the G League is too popular for this to be such an issue where we're having to like dig deeper into the stats.
Yeah, there's one little fix. If you go into like the stat profile of anybody, it'll say profile. And then under that, it will say season type. There's an option to do showcase plus regular season,
Okay.
but it takes a little bit of digging. And like you said, it shouldn't be this hard to like dig into things. So anybody in the G League stat department, if you ever listen to this or see this, please, we're begging you, just make it easier to where it's all the total games that show up the very first thing.
The international stuff is easier to find. Like I was looking up Ryan Repair stuff the other day, and it was, I mean, it's all right there. And it says, okay, he played for this team, but this is the yearly total. It's so much easier. And that's international, guys. So I don't understand it. Maybe there's a rationale for it. But yeah, I mean, Scoot is a hot topic. I wrote an article at Draft Digest a month or so ago, whenever this all came about. And it was like the suddenly polarizing Scoot Henderson at number 2. And it's not just Detroit. There's other teams in the lottery. Like, I don't think Houston's going to debate whether to take Scoot at number 2 because they need a point guard. You know, San Antonio's not going to debate whether or not to take Scoot because they need a point guard. But there's some other teams that land that could be in a similar situation. Do you pair him next to LaMelo Ball if, you know, Charlotte lands at number 2? So it definitely became a debate. And I just want to start it with this. I think it became a debate because Brandon Miller was so good this year, not because Scoot isn't what a lot of people thought. Now, to speak specifically to Scoot, if you want to throw out generational, and I think you agree with me here, I don't agree with that. I think Victor Wembanyama is a generational prospect. I do not consider Scoot Henderson a generational prospect.
Yeah, I agree with that. Wembanyama's generational. I don't consider Scoot that. For me, this is where the old man in me comes out. And for those of you that don't know, I'm an English instructor at the University of Arizona in my day job. So like hyperbole is one of those old man things to me that I don't like. And I definitely feel it's a generational thing where so many younger kids are like the GOAT or like the best. And I'm like, not everybody can be the GOAT or like be the best. So I try to really not do that. To put those kind of labels on there. Another thing about Scoot, though, like being more polarizing is before we recorded, we started talking about the injuries.
Yeah.
He did sustain a broken nose and a concussion around November 18th, missed a couple games, came back in December, and then around January 17th suffered an ankle injury. So I think those two things too slowed him down. You can definitely see in the stats, like there was a couple in between the December to January before the ankle injury where he was just putting up like 20 point after 20 point game. Then the ankle injury happened, and you can see down the stretch the numbers weren't quite as impressive in terms of scoring. Definitely still dished out the rock a lot. And then you add on that the struggles from three shooting and the defensive concerns that people have had all year. I think those are the things that really like kind of, again, they factored into that, and it shouldn't really be held against Scoot. He was trying to get through injury, and he still put up these good numbers. So yeah, that's probably part of the reason too, I would think, right?
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, and some fans may look at this as a negative, or I don't know. It depends on what they think about it. But I spoke to an NBA draft analyst, and I'm not going to say because I don't want to name drop, like I don't want to be that guy. But I do. I have met one that's one of the top, you know, and I'm able to text with him. I'm fortunate enough to have met him, communicate with him, talk, whatever. And he said, I just don't, this was what he was saying is, I don't think Scoot really cares right now. Like he thinks Scoot, not care. He said, I think Scoot is bored. That's what he said. I should represent this correctly. He said, I think Scoot is bored. And I don't think it was in a negative way. It was just like, hey, I'm playing in the G League. I've proven myself. I did it as a 17-year-old. Now I'm doing it as an 18. I'm battling these injuries. And I mean, if we want to dig deeper into that, we can. Like, I don't think he should be injured. Like his body looks good for a 19-year-old now. But I do think that was part of what like the overall production was. I think he just felt like he had proven what he needed to. He's got some nagging injuries. Now, the concussion stuff, as we talked about, is a little concerning just in general. That's something you have to take serious. But I do think that, and his team wasn't any good, Steve. Like the Ignite are not a good team.
What do you mean they had all those 3-point shooters that shot like 30% and John
they have
Jenkins?
One good, I say they have John Jenkins. And here's the thing. If John Jenkins was that good, he wouldn't still be playing in the G League with the Ignite. And City Sissoko is intriguing. He's probably not going to be a first round pick. Leonard Millard is intriguing. Maybe into the first round. You know, like he has the least talent. I don't know every G League roster, so I shouldn't say this. I would assume he has one of the least talented rosters around him, or at least the youngest, right?
Yeah, he definitely has the most inexperience. Like most of these other G League guys have like 4 or 5 other vets that are at the head of the team, whereas the 4 or 5 guys at the head of the team for G League are all like 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. So yeah, absolutely, 100% there with you. So having said all that, where do you have Scoot Henderson ranked on your big board?
He's number 2. He's number 2. He's been number 2 for a while. I will say this, and we can get into this however we want. I had very distinct tiers. Victor has always been in a tier by himself to me, Steve. Always. Generational talent. Scoot, I had never thought was generational. I thought he was really, really good. I think he can run the show. I think his change of pace and the way he operates in offense is way underrated because he is such an explosive athlete that it doesn't get talked about enough. But I had him in tier 2 by himself. I am extremely close and probably need more of a deeper dive into Brandon Miller to putting those two into the same tier. I would say as it sits here right now, today as we record, I still do not have them in the same tier though.
Yeah, I'm with you on having Victor number 1 and Scoot number 2. If you go to resball.substack.com, where I have my big boards that I update every month, I name each tier. And for this year, I busted out the platinum diamond tier, which had both of them at number 1, because they're prospects that you look at their film and you're like, there's nobody else that I could take number 1. And definitely Scoot is below Wembanyama. Like Wembanyama is an alien, like everybody said. He's probably one of the few players that in the breakdown I'm not going to give a comp for, because it would kind of be an insult to him, right? Because he's just so unique in that regard. So yeah, number 1, but also Scoot, like the names that have been brought up, D Rose, John Wall, De'Aaron Fox, like you see all of these guys in him that it operates that well. And it's not just an athlete, it's, like you said, somebody that really knows how to operate on the court, change pace, knows where everybody is, knows how to hit teammates in every single regard. Yeah, number 2 for me as well.
Yeah, and like I said, he's really good. And the 3-point shooting is a question. Like, I understand that. I will say that Scoot has been shooting from the NBA 3-point line throughout these last 2 seasons. And I realized you could probably go find film where Brandon Miller, a lot of his attempts are from NBA range, but there's a vast difference. I didn't even realize there's 3 feet difference between on the wings and the top of the, I didn't realize it was that much. I looked it up for something I was doing the other day. And I was like, oh, wow, like that's even more than what I realized. So 3 feet on every single attempt, Steve, every single attempt, because some of Brandon Miller's are coming right at the line. So, you have to take that into account a little bit, that at least Scoot has taken how many ever attempts, and they're all from the NBA line. And I think he's a really good mid-range shooter. I think that should project a little bit to the 3-point line. And he doesn't have to be, he doesn't have to be great. Now, the fit with the Pistons, maybe it needs to be a little bit better than with some other teams, but I'm not overly worried about the shot as a 19-year-old.
So you said the fit on the Pistons. Let's go there. That's the whole reason we're here at Woodward Pistons. Say the Pistons land pick number 2. Do they take Scoot? Let's just start with that question.
Yes. Now, there's a debate, but before we get into what I think is going to be the funnest part of this, I'm excited because you told me beforehand how many we have to talk about. But right now, no trades, no anything else. Like, if it's just if Troy Weaver is selecting number 2 for the Pistons, my recommendation would be to take Scoot Henderson.
So what happens now with this team that drafted Killian Hayes, who we're probably not going to factor into this, but this will be the 4th straight guard, right? Killian Hayes, Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, and now Scoot Henderson. What happens with Cade and Ivey in particular? And to me, like, the way I think about this is, does Ivey basically have 1 foot out the door at this point? I mean, we can assume that Cade is going to be here until the wheels fall off, or until he decides he doesn't want to be in Detroit anymore. So how does this impact those 2 in particular, and probably more Ivey in particular?
Yeah, I would start them all. I would try to make it work. I would start Scoot at the point. I would play Jaden at the 2, and I would play Cade at the 3. And I know a lot of people don't like that, because it takes away Cade's positional size advantage, right? And I understand it. It also puts Cade off the ball. I also think part of the intrigue of Cade is that he is so malleable and he can fit any role. And so he can go be a bucket getter. I think he can focus on defense and being this all-around, just 2-way great player. I will also say, before you crush me for it, I think you can stagger so all of these guys get a chance to do that. So if I play 6 minutes, Steve, I take Scoot Henderson out and I let Cade play the point guard for 6 more minutes. At 3 minutes into that, I take Jaden Ivey out. And then you know what I do with Jaden Ivey? I put him back in to start the second quarter. Or maybe it's Scoot, or you know what I mean? Like, there's a way to map this out so they're actually only on the court for 20 minutes a night.
Do you remember those Oklahoma City teams? It was only 1 season, but it had Dennis Schroeder, SGA, and Chris Paul.
Yeah.
Like, do you envision it being something like that, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it's even. I thought you were going to go with whenever it was Harden coming off the bench for the Thunder. I know not all those players were the same back when it was Katie, but I don't think you have to bring Ivy off the bench. You start Jaden Ivey. You start Jaden Ivey. But what I'm saying, maybe you take him out 6 minutes into the first quarter, so then he can come in with the second unit and just let him cook, kind of like what we've seen from him, the last couple months. And so I think I'm not saying it would work. I'm saying I would try it. I would try it. And then you can decide from there. If you have to move on from Jaden Ivey because Scoot is so good and, it's not working, then you improved upon Jaden Ivey with Scoot if that's what happens. So I would try it. I think there's a chance that it works. Obviously, a lot. Here's the thing. They all have to improve their 3-point shooting from what it is right now. And so I do understand, the spacing concerns with those three.
Do you think any of the three could become like a volume 3-point shooter to where it would alleviate those concerns?
Cade's the one. If one of them's going to do it, and I don't think Cade shot really well at Oklahoma State his freshman season. I don't think we saw the best Cade. I know we don't, because the reports where the shin splints have gone back for how long. I think it affected his shot more than we realized. I very much expect to see Cade come back and I think Cade would be okay taking 7 threes a game. And I think he can do it 38 to 40%. And again, Cade's malleable. That's what makes Cade special. And so here's where it would be tough. I think you can stagger them for the first 42 minutes of every game. And where it becomes possibly an issue is, can you really finish every game with those three on the floor? And who has the ball in their hands? And are you just going to stick Scoot and Jaden Ivey in the corner while Cade closes out games? I don't know. So I think end of games is where it could become a little bit more dicey.
All right. So let's say that the Pistons are like, you know what? We don't want another guard. We don't think Scoot is generational. Like we have all said, we think he's going to be good. But you know what? We're getting these phone calls like Joe's getting back here saying like, hey, we're going to give you some stuff. We're going to give you multiple things so that our team can move up and select Scoot Henderson or maybe even Brandon Miller. And for me, it's both at 2 or 3. So maybe somebody takes Brandon Miller at 2 and then the Pistons are at 3 or vice versa. They still end up at 3, but somebody really, really, really wants Brandon Miller. So again, I told Bryce I was going to give him some trade scenarios here, because I really started thinking about this once the Wiseman trade happened, and I was listening to the Athletics NBA podcast, their Saturday Slam and Jam, and Andrew Schlecht brought up this idea that, the move for Wiseman, it's bad only because of the other assets the Pistons don't have in the future. And he laid out like Houston has all these picks going forward. Brooklyn has all these picks going forward. All these rebuilding teams stockpiled draft picks. Oklahoma City has who knows how many. I don't even think they realize how many they have anymore. But
too many for them to actually use, Steve. They can't use all of them.
Yeah, and then he said Detroit is basically -1. So it was something like Houston's like +4, Brooklyn's like +4, OKC's like +20 or whatever, and then Detroit's like -1. And his whole point was like, you're setting yourself up at a major disadvantage by not, even if you don't want to have draft picks, right? If your plan is to say, oh, we're going to trade for another star, guess what? Those other teams that have all those multiple draft picks, guess what? They're in front of you already in that race. So he was like, they need to do something else. So when I was thinking, oh, maybe they can't take Scoot at 2 or they don't want to take Scoot at 2, but maybe somebody gives them an offer that, we're going to give you a player or picks also in this deal so that we can put on Scoot. So
can I touch on that real quick?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm very open to trading out of number 2. I'm just not super open to straight up taking Brandon Miller over Scoot Henderson right now. That's where I have a little bit of pushback. Now it's gotten way closer. I'm much more willing to entertain that debate now because of how much Brandon Miller has improved throughout the year. But option 1A is draft Scoot. Option 1B is find a really, really good trade. And it sounds like we're going to have a few of those. I'm excited to discuss.
So I broke these into a couple different tiers. Number 1 tier is teams I considered, but I felt their offer isn't good enough. And these are mostly other teams like in the lottery or our lottery range. I put Wizards LOL because like they would want to do it right, but like, what do you
Yeah.
really want from them? I wouldn't want Porzingis, Kuzma. I don't
Johnny
think.
Davis.
Yeah. Oh. I know anybody that followed DBB last year, I was all in on Johnny Davis. That has not looked great on my end so far, having Johnny Davis number 3.
Other than when he played the Pistons.
Yeah, that was about it, right? I was trying to send Laz tweets and he just brushed me off, as he should. But I don't think the Wizards really have anything either in terms of like future picks. They don't have extra picks this year. The other players they could trade you are like Corey Kispert and like you said, Johnny Davis. And
Danny
again,
Avdia.
Kuzma doesn't fit what you want. Avdia is a terrible 3-point shooter, although he's gotten better as a defender. So that one's out. Toronto right now has pick 11, and they also have Siakam and OG Anunoby who've been thrown out on trade rumors. I like both of them. I do not think they are worth enough for like pick 11 and then themselves to get number 2 or number 3. So that one's not going to cut it. And then New Orleans right now has pick number 13. I love Trey Murphy, and he was somebody I argued for up and down in Cade's draft. Like, they have to get him to pair him with Cade because he's so efficient. Trey Murphy, by the way, the youngest player on record right now to get 60, 40, 90. So hopefully that stays. He is wildly efficient. And then Herb Jones. If they offered Herb Jones, Trey Murphy the third, 13, I think that would be something to think about. But the talent gap between pick number 2 and pick number 13, I think, is too wide. Too wide. And then the other one is Oklahoma City. Right now, they have pick 11, excuse me. And then they could also offer Lou Dort, who's probably got a little bit of a foot out the door because J-Dub has been so good. Poku, who also probably has another foot out the door because Jalen Williams, J-Will, has looked like a real thing. Kenrick Williams is there. And then they have so many future draft picks. Like, I pulled up the page to try and even think about it. But I mean, it's ridiculous. It just next year, they have their own. They have Houston's, as long as it's not a top 5 pick. And then they have the Clippers next year, and they have Utah's as long as it is not a top 10 pick. After that, they have also more Clipper picks, more Houston picks. They have Miami picks. They have Philadelphia picks later on. Like, that was the one that was on the line for me. Because again, like OKC 11 plus those guys, like if they said, hey, we'll give you 11, Lou Dort, Poku, Kenrick Williams, and then like 3 future picks, that's the one to me that's really on the line of like, I would say no, but it's pretty close, I think.
Yeah, they pretty much own the Clippers draft for, however long. So
yeah, but out of those ones that I said I felt the offer isn't enough, was there any you would take, or you like me and you're like, that's not enough?
I like those 2 guys for the Pelicans, but not, I mean, here's my worry. And I guess this is kind of what you're doing. Like, this is a high-end talent. And so are the Pistons in a position to not get a high-end talent just to fill out like with some really real, I don't want to just say role players in a negative way. It's either got to be another high-end talent or a guy you feel like is in a role where he's not able to show that, but he comes to Detroit and now he's able to flourish. To me, if you're trading Scoot, it's for the future assets like you're talking about, but also for him for a better fit, right? To me, I'm interested to see what you think. I think there's 3 future starters on this team right now: Cade, Ivey, and Duren, which essentially leaves the 3 and the 4 spots open. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I mean, I would disagree with that. I think Duren still has a lot of like awareness on D to prove he can be a full-time starter. And I've been the Cade and Ivey skeptic all along. His finishing is not that great, which is what his strength was supposed to be. And his defense is, it's not hyperbole to call either him or Wiseman 2 of the worst defenders in the league. It's terrible. Absolutely. It has a long way to go. And again, it's not to say he can't be a useful pick. And I've been roasted a lot for saying this, but if Cade and Ivey ends up being like the Vinnie Johnson of this era's Detroit Pistons, that's great because Vinnie Johnson is necessary to win a championship. But again, the defense and the finishing, I guess if I had to put it in one thing for Ivey's offense, it's touch. Both the free throw percentage and his finishing have been really worrisome at times to where it's hard for him to stay around 70%. And then again, his finishing isn't that great. Maybe you chalk it up to like the team's terrible, so nobody's taking pressure off of him, but it does concern me.
No, it is. So I guess maybe the better way to say is I don't know that you're actively looking to improve those over those two guys right now. So I guess I always look at, the reason Brandon Miller makes so much sense is he can slide right into the three. I've always like Victor's a great fit. It doesn't matter because he's generational, but he can slide. I think Victor's a four. That's just my opinion. So you can slide Victor right in there. So that's what I would be looking for is a player of the caliber we're talking about with Scoot, but at a position that makes a little bit more sense for Detroit. And I'm with you. I was okay with trading Bojan Bogdanovic for a future pick because I do think Detroit needs future assets. They are going to lose a pick eventually. A first round pick is going to go out. We better hope, or that means this restoration took even longer than what fans are willing to do right now. So the fan base actually better hope that conveys eventually. I believe it's to the Knicks right now. I know it's bounced all over the place. But yeah, I think some future assets in terms of draft picks is something that should be higher on the priority list. I'm with you on that.
All right, so yeah, you say it needs to be somebody closer to that level of Scoot. Well, what about the teams that potentially would have the pick like right after Detroit or maybe a pick or two after at 3 or 4, starting with San Antonio? San Antonio is like, hey, we'll just swap you picks and we'll give you one of either Devin Vassell or Keldon Johnson. And then they also have like Trey Jones, Blake Wesley, Malachi Branham. I'm not sure how much of you a fan are, but I definitely think like their pick plus either Devin Vassell or Keldon Johnson, that's intriguing enough for me to think about it, depending on who I get after it. And definitely Devin Vassell. I'm a big Devin Vassell fan, so that one's a sucker for me. The Rockets might have 3 or 4. They also have pick 20 in this draft. They also have those future Brooklyn Nets picks. They have two of my favorite defenders on their team that they don't utilize enough, in my opinion, in Usman Garuba and Tari Eason, who would intrigue me. They also have Ty Washington. They have KJ Martin, Kevin Porter Jr., say what you will. I mean, he's productive. Josh Christopher. And maybe they're like, you know what? We don't want Jabari Smith.
Yes. Yes.
So we'll give you Jabari plus number 3 or number 4. And then the last one in this, which will segue into the final, kind of the final tier, is Charlotte, who right now they have pick 4. They also have 28 and 34 in this draft right now. I mean, maybe they trade future picks as well. And like, to me, I put it in this, do you like any of their other players to consider this LOL? Because to me, any of the other players, I'm just like, no, thanks. But maybe if they said, okay, we'll give you 4, 28, 34 and like another future pick or 2, that might be worth it. So these of the teams that could have pick 3 or 4, like, are there any that you're like, you know what, I think I would do that?
Yeah. I mean, I actually like the first 2. If you told me, especially if it's 3, and that's why I don't think that I don't think you get it done at 3 because Brandon Miller has been so good. But if you told me I could trade 2 for Keldon Johnson and Brandon Miller, who I would draft at 3, or Jabari Smith Jr. and Brandon Miller, I'm doing it. I'm done. I'm in on that. I mean, because I say now those guys fit in perfect to what you want to do. And so I'm okay. I guess I would have to look into a little bit of like Keldon, because Keldon's on a good contract too. His contract actually goes down 20 million, 19, 17, 5, 17.
Fire your agent, Keldon. Fire him.
So the thing with Keldon is, do you have a little bit of redundancy? How's the roster shake out with that? I guess would be the thing with the Spurs and with Keldon, Cade, Ivey, Brandon Miller, that would be something to work through. But I think that's 2 really talented dudes. Again, Brandon Miller, Jabari Smith Jr., I would have a really hard time passing that up. The Hornets one I don't like as much unless I really looked at the draft assets and was like, honestly, 28 doesn't, what'd you say, 28? Is that where they're at?
Yeah, 28 and 34.
Yeah, I mean, the Pistons have 31, which I think is a really good pick. I love that they have their own second-round pick this year. I think it went around the league and came back, actually. But I love that they have that pick. But I would rather have 4 or whatever they land and then some future picks for them.
Okay, so the last tier is like what I combined together of teams with multiple picks in this draft. And most of these, I concocted what I call the Godfather offers. Like I told you before we started recording, there's one I'm pretty sure you're going to say no to. And there's another that if you say no to, I will choke you out through the screen here. So let's start with the first team in this draft that has multiple picks, and that's Orlando. Right now, Orlando is slated to have number 5, number 10, and pick 35. They could also potentially trade like Cole Anthony, who would be nice 6-man I know him and Cade are pretty close. Wendell Carter Jr., maybe. I don't know if the team wants another big man, but Wendell Carter Jr. is the exact kind of big man that the Pistons need to actually play, consistent defense. And then we have Portland, who right now has pick number 6, pick number 23, and 44. And then there's our buddies in the division, Indiana Pacers, at pick number 7 right now, 25, 29, and 32. And then the Jazz, although the season didn't go as tanktastically as they wanted it to, right now they have pick number 9, number 17, 27, and then they have all those future Minnesota picks as well in the Rudy Gobert trade. And then last but not least is Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Nets. Right now they have 21, 22, and number 52. Plus they have all those future Phoenix picks as well in the Kevin Durant trade. So are you ready for these Godfather offers, Bryce Simon?
Yes.
All right, let's start with potentially the weakest one. Okay, Brooklyn gets on the phone and says, hey, we want to trade up to number 2 or number 3. We're going to give you 21, 22, Cam Johnson, and Royce O'Neal, and we're going to give you 2 future Phoenix picks. What do you say to that one?
I think I'm out.
Yeah, that's the one that I was like, I think I'd be out too. Like, I like Cam Johnson, but the gap between 21 and 22 and number 2 is just, I don't think any of those guys are good enough to really.
There's no guarantee you get, and I know what people are going to say. There's no guarantee Scoot's a star or Brandon Miller. I get it. I have way more confidence in either one of those guys being a star based off what we know right now than either of those draft picks, Cam Johnson. And we have no idea what's going to happen with the Suns, right? I guess it depends on what year, but Kevin Durant's there now. Devin Booker's a star. Chris Paul may be on his way out, but who else is going to want to join up? Like, it could combust, but maybe they go on a run. Who knows?
Yeah. All right. So the next one would be the Utah Jazz. They say, okay, we're going to give you all our picks this year, which is 9, 17, 27. We're going to give you a future Minnesota pick, unprotected, and we'll give you Colin Sexton. I tried to find a better, more fit. Like, maybe they give up Lauri Markkanen, and I can't see that one happening. But I mean, Colin Sexton's another good 6 man. So you actually have scoring punch off the bench. That's 3 picks this year, 1 within the top 10, and then that future Minnesota. I personally believe Minnesota is going to implode at any minute, but I don't know what you think.
That would be the kicker for me, knowing what that Minnesota pick, because I don't like having to drop to 9. I don't like that. Now at 17, we can draft my guy Jordan Hawkins, and I can be very excited about that. I think I'm out, man. I think I'm out.
Yeah, I think I would be out on that one too, to be perfectly honest. Like, it would make me think about it. And like you said, it would really depend on Minnesota. If it was like next year's draft, most people aren't that high on, like myself as well. You never know. But if it was like a year or 2 out too, that's probably another year for like Cat and Ant to blow up. There's been weird chemistry there, and maybe that draft ends up being a little better than that. So yeah, I'd probably say no to it too. Portland, they say, okay, we're going to give you number 6. We're going to give you 23, 44. And this one to me is like, I don't know if this is realistic, but maybe they're like, hey, we'll also give you Shaedon Sharpe.
Ooh. Okay, so the only thing with me here is now you're still a little like, are you going to play Cade, Ivey, and Shaedon together? And I don't like falling completely out of the top 5. But just because the 5 guys I have doesn't mean one of them couldn't be there. So 6, 23, and 44 plus Shaedon?
Yes, 6, 23, 44, and we'll give you Shaedon Sharpe. What do you say?
No.
That one's really close, though, isn't it? It's super close. Yeah. I personally like guys that I think would fall down to 6 that I have right now at 3 and 4. One being Asar Thompson, the other being Cam Whitmore. So I would probably say yes in that regard if I knew one of those 2 was going to be there. And this might also be one of those that are contingent of like, okay, we have a deal if who I want is still available when you pick,
So Cam was the one in my mind, Steve, because like to me it's Victor, Scoot, Brandon Miller, Amin, and then I have Cam at 5. And so I've said, if the Pistons right now can't drop below 5, you're going to get, Amin, we could debate whether that's a good fit or not also. I get it. but Cam, you could draft it for over a min if you wanted to, or if you're so I think they're going to be able to get one of those guys. When you get out of the top 5, now it's not guaranteed anymore. And I actually realized today, I was like, man, I keep forgetting about Asar and how kind of a nice fit he is into what they need, because hopefully he's going to be a really good defender, and there's projections for that. And so I can't forget about him, at 6 or 7, if in one of these scenarios.
Yeah, it's really on the line though. That's the one that like you just have to sit there and think about and at the last minute make a decision and pray to God it's the right thing to do. Okay, final 2. The second to last offer of the Godfather offers. Indiana is like, okay, we're going to give up every single pick we have in this draft. 7, 25, 29, and 32. And then you get one of Halliburton, Mathurin, or Miles Turner. You get one of those guys.
Yes.
I thought you'd say yes on that one too. What if it's Miles Turner though? Because that's the one that I think like I would have to go back and forth on. But I mean, I lean a little bit more towards yes, but it's the other two make too much sense, right? And I don't think they would give up Halliburton, but who knows? Maybe they're just like, you know what? We love Scoot. We can't let Scoot and Halliburton play together, so let's just move on from that.
Yeah, Miles would be interesting. I love the idea of Miles. He's like what every team looks for, right? This rim protecting big who can stretch the floor. And now you can essentially play any other big with him.
Yeah.
And so I like Miles Turner. I'd have to look up the contract numbers for him. I know he just got the extension, right? I think they used their cap space and paid him a bunch this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's making like 25, 35 million right now, something like that.
Yeah, but I think it actually, like, it doesn't stay that way. So yeah, I would do that. And like we just talked about, then if you walk away with Miles and maybe Cam falls to 7 or Asar falls to 7, which is realistic, right? Because we haven't even talked about Jarris Walker. Jarris Walker could easily be in the top 5. Anthony, even Anthony Black at 7, maybe you feel good now that you've added Miles Turner. But I still want to say this. I still think that this team needs to be swinging a little bit for a star, right? Because of what we talked about. Are we sure that I'm as high as anybody on Jalen Duren's ceiling, but we don't know if he's going to make it. I think Cade and Ivey's shown a lot of good things along with the negatives that you discussed earlier. And even Cade has only played like 70 games in his career. So can we really be in the situation where we're like, hey, let's fit this guy in here, this guy, like we need to make sure we have the stars first.
Are you ready for the last one then? Talking about stars. The last
If you give me Paolo Banchero, it's done.
The last one is, okay, the Orlando Magic fall head over heels for the Scooter Brandon Miller. And they say, okay, we'll give you number 5, number 10, and Franz Wagner.
Oh yeah. You got to do that though.
Yeah.
Franz is really good. I'm going to get Franz and Cam Whitmore. And then I'm going to, yeah, that's a done deal.
Yeah, and that's the one that I said, if you didn't say yes to, I was going to jump through the screen like, what are you doing? Because that makes too much sense, right? You have your defender now on Franz. I don't think he's going to continue to put up like 20 points per game like he is now, where Orlando's just like, hey, put him up, whatever. But he will continue to be fantastic defender. Like you said, now you get somebody like a Cam Whitmore. And then who cares? You have money in the bank now. Go ahead and draft your guy, Jordan Hawkins, at number 10, right? It might as well.
That's what I was going to say is I'm going to reach maybe, but I'm going to reach for Jordan Hawkins. He's going to be my bucket off the bench. I got Franz and Cam starting with Cade, Ivey, Duren, whoever. And I feel pretty good about that. So, yeah, I think that one you would have to. And part of that one is, yes, Franz is really good. That is definitely part of it. Getting 2 picks in the top 10 is also a major component of that. Because you know what? See, like Asar could fall to 10. You know what I mean? So like there's, the Thompson twins are all over the place in terms of projections and how people feel about them. So you could take Cam at 5, who I think has a little bit higher of a floor, and then just take an absolute swing at number 10, as opposed to somebody like Jordan Hawkins, who we kind of know what he's going to be. So I think it opens up a lot of possibilities there.
What about if they just offered that, like, hey, we're going to give you number 5 and number 10?
Not at 5 and 10. The only way I think I would do that with the Magic, where I just trade for their picks, if it was at 3, definitely. Like I'd be like, okay, you want Scoot that bad? We'll fall to 3. We'll draft Brandon Miller, but you're still going to give us number 10. So we have, to make it worth it. Where it gets really interesting is, do you do it at number 4? I don't think I would. Would you do 4 and 10 for 2?
I personally would, yeah, because again, I would want them to tell me who they want to draft, though, like, just to be upfront, to be like, hey, who are you going to take? Just so that way I'm not trading you this pick and then you immediately take the guy that I want.
Sure.
But yeah, I probably would, just because, again, I think just trying to get more shots at a superstar in the top 10. And the top 10 of this draft, like we've said before, is really good. There are a lot of high ceiling guys here that if they develop right, they're going to be great.
Who would you take? Who would you hope to get it for then? Like, just out of curiosity. I mean, because we would assume at that point, let's just assume the three names are off the board. Who's your fourth guy, I guess, that you would be like, specifically for the Pistons?
Either Asar or Cam. It would be one of the
Okay.
two. Yeah. I have them pretty like neck and neck in terms of like who is number 4 right now. I have Asar edging out Cam just because I think Asar's passing and like defensive versatility is a little bit more. I love Cam's man-to-man defense, but he really didn't show that much in terms of like a weak side rim protector, which you would hope he
Sure.
would be at his size, right? But he really didn't have that many blocks. Part of it's Villanova didn't ask him to do that as much. But it is one of those things that like Asar's got this, oh, maybe Ron Artest level of defender in him. So that's just the teeniest, tiniest margin. I would want one of those two though at 4 for sure, and guaranteed to get one of them.
Yeah, I mean, the intel on both the twins is really good. I mean, everybody I've talked to, every podcast I've listened to, everybody who's had a chance to go and meet them. We had Matt Babcock on the Pistons Pulse, and he went down there, interviewed them, did that thing. And it was like everybody says these are great kids, they're competitors, they're hard workers, all of that stuff. And so I think that's really encouraging with both of them. And I think, watching what I've watched, the defensive flashes are really good. And I think the bad stuff or, the disengagement is just part of the context of where they're playing. Like at the end of the day, the OTE is what the OTE is, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it.
Yeah, and I personally trust the development staff they have there between
Yeah.
Kevin Ollie and Dave Liato, that they have like legit development guys there that are
Yes.
in their ear all the time, not letting them slack on anything. So
Yeah. No, I think it's going to be really interesting to see like how OTE goes, G League Ignite. I think we're even going to see some this year. Like I heard today that Kyle Filipowski may be going back to Duke. A guy that seems to be a first round pick. Like he's not even going to test. I've heard that he's not even going to enter his name. And I would bet a lot of money. A lot of that has to do, or that would not be happening if it wasn't for NIL. Like it's one thing. I love Duke. I love John Shire. He can say that all he wants, but if he's not going back and getting a ton of NIL money, some of that stuff, doesn't matter quite as much. So between the portal and NIL money, it's affected this draft stuff too. I mean, it's crazy.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So again, thanks so much to Bryce Simon, Motor City Hoops. Go follow his stuff there, Motor City Hoops YouTube channel. We got Draft Digest stuff over at si.com. Check out all the things that he has going on there, and definitely listen to the Pistons Pulse every week if you're a Pistons fan. Let everybody know when you're going to be in the D and what's going to happen at that time.
Yeah, I will be in town on Monday, April 3rd. Me and my wife are flying in. That evening at 8 Eastern, we will be at the Hobcat Detroit in Midtown. We'll do a live episode. We're going to record live in person with an audience. Wes, our producer, will be walking around, with the mic. You guys can answer, ask your questions. And then I've been pitching as the most engaging, immediate mailbag you've ever been a part of, because you'll ask your question and we'll answer right away. And then I'll go to the game on Tuesday and Wednesday. And then me and my wife will fly back to Kansas on Thursday. So excited. This will be my 3rd trip to Detroit. And the first 2 trips were amazing. I don't expect anything different this time around.
That sounds like an awesome time, man. I wish could be there, but if you're going to be in the D, if you're going to that game, if you're going downtown, make sure you check that out because it's going to be an awesome time.
Yep.
Thank you once again, Bryce Simon. I can't thank you enough. I wish you well in all your endeavors. I was going to have Joe D tell you something, but it seems like he's still on the phone trying to work some deals. I don't know. He's still trying to call over to Serbia. He's on hold, but I don't know what's going to happen with that. So thank you so much, Bryce. We'll see you next time.